Barbara. How are you? Ooh, you're so wide awake. Morning, Gordy. Well, I see you're stuck in your
It's hours before the first visitors arrive.
Seen your honey this morning?
A time for morning greetings and the day's first meal.
People look at these animals and they see an animal that sleeps up to 20 hours a day, and it's kind of difficult to recognize that an animal that sleeps that much can actually have a personality, but they really do. They're very unique animals too, and so they're really fascinating. They're actually marsupials rather than bears. A lot of times people call them bears. That probably originated because they look sort of like teddy bears.
looking at.
Morning, Barbara. How are you? Ooh, you're so wide awake. Morning, Gordy. Really? So you're stuck in your
It's hours before the first visitors arrive.
you had me this morning?
A time for morning greetings and the day's first meal.
People look at these animals and they see an animal that sleeps up to 20 hours a day, and it's kind of difficult to recognize that an animal that sleeps that much can actually have a personality, but they really do. They're very unique animals too, and so they're really fascinating. They're actually marsupials rather than bears. A lot of times people call them bears. That probably originated because they look sort of like teddy bears.
My closest attachments has been with some of the gorillas and some of the orangs some time back. Alvila, the female that's over there now, I gave her her first bottle back in the 60s when she was born. After she was born, I went over to the children's zoo that night, and they had a little bit of liquid that wanted me to get down her. And you start to go to sleep, I'd pinch her foot just a little bit. She'd wake up and take a couple of drinks and go to sleep, and I worked through the night that way. And by the time the children's zoo person come in the next morning, she had taken her fluid. Well, I kind of feel close to Alvila. You know.
First one I saw when I started working here was his mother, and she was 2. I've waited 20 years for this. I think he's pretty good. Hi, Barbara. How are you today? Change your diapers over here, okay? I've got to cut a hole for your tail. Just a minute. Don't go anywhere. There you go. You can't help but feel like a mom. You know, you're here every day, 5 days a week for how many years? A number of years, and you can't help but take care and wonder how they're doing, if they're doing well. And that attachment, that fondness that you have for your animals in your care, can't help but make you have that maternal feeling, whether you're male or female, you know.
There's a lot of times I go through the zoo and a week will go by and I think to myself, you know, I haven't even noticed any animals around me because I don't pay attention to the animals as much.
Just as spectacular and exotic as the zoo's animals are its more than 7,000 species of plants collected from around the world since the zoo's earliest days.
During the 30s, Dr. Harry made, I think, 3 trips around the world and then a complete trip of South America. And he collected seeds on all of these trips and came back and brought them back to the zoo. A lot of these things wouldn't grow. Some of them didn't, but a lot of them did. So that's why we have the start of the botanical collection that's in the zoo.
The copy is a rock outcropping. It's from the grass area of Central Africa. There are certain animals that live in that type of environment. We've taken the same type of plant life that would be in that in the copy and adapted to this exhibit here.
Like the African copy, more and more zoo exhibits in the future will combine plants, mammals, birds, and reptiles in complete environments that replicate their native habitats.
Topiary is the art of shaping plants into geometric or animal forms. It draws attention to the animals, it draws attention to the plants as well, and it shows another whole dimension of what plants can do here at the zoo.
Hi, you're now in Kids Corner. In this area, you'll learn a lot of interesting facts and involve yourself in fun activities. Your choices for exploration include the following areas: amazing animal facts, baby animals, dinosaur friends, fun activities, story time, wild voices tour, working with animals. Remember, you can switch to any one of these 7 areas whenever you wish. To find and to begin exploring any area, move ping to the yellow arrow at the top of the screen and push the A button on your controller. Then choose the area you would like to explore. You may also enjoy learning about animals in this welcome area. To begin your explorations, click on one or more of the buttons below.
bus, nursery, sky ride both ways, and a map of the park. Thank you. Bye-bye. And he is the only albino koala that's ever been born in captivity. There's only one other albino, and she is in Australia, and she was born in the wild. So he's a real special animal.
Well, do you think she wants them on her hard-to-clean feathers? She wants them on her easy-to-clean skin, and that's why come too close to her. And that's why I'm asking you to stay exactly where you are.
It's a privilege to be able to have a part to play in preserving an animal as magnificent as the Przewalski horse, or as a tapir, or as a gorilla or orangutan, or almost any of the species you can see here at the zoo. These are part of the treasure of biological resources of our planet, and they've been on the verge of extinction, and now they're coming back. And the most fantastic thing would be able to participate in seeing that they go back into nature. That's really one of the big goals. Without zoos and without game preserves, certain animals will disappear because I believe in some years to come there really won't be wild animals. They will be managed in some way or other. I like to be part of that.
The world to me would be a very, very lonely place if we were the only species inhabiting it. And at the rate of extinction of species, which is about one a day right now, and by the year 2000 maybe one a minute, and those are rather accurate projections, we might be the last species, and indeed then we may ourselves be in jeopardy as our habitats become so imperiled by human activity.
we have a tremendous opportunity to allow people to see the diversity, the wonders of different types of life that exist on this planet, and thereby we hope to let them come to appreciate this more and to participate more actively in saving the wildlife, saving the forms of plants and animals that are in danger on our planet.
The zoo's hospital complex houses the important work of a team of researchers, veterinarians, and animal keepers.
We have probably the most diverse, multi-talented program of any zoo in the world, bringing scientific disciplines to bear on the needs of these animals. I'm Director of Research in the Center of Reproduction of Endangered Species, which is the zoo's research department, which aims to get all the knowledge necessary to establish self-sustaining populations of endangered species in captivity, with the hope that ultimately we return some of these animals to the wild, provided there is a wild preserved habitat for them. We interact, of course, with the curators and with the clinical veterinarians. The curators will actually provide us access to the animals. If we're investigating infectious disease problems, the veterinarians are the first to bring these to our attention, and then also again provide us the sample materials necessary in the laboratory to identify the disease in question, which is causing a health problem.
What's the scenario going to be for the hospital this one? We've got the springbuck to do first, then the muntjac, and then the pygmy chimps after that.
Coming up after that.
Okay, and the deal with those guys is just regular processing because we want to give them their physical exams and TB test them and take some specimens for some investigative studies for mycobacterial infections.
These are lion-tailed macaques, which come from India, and it's one of the most endangered of the macaque species. There are probably only about 1,000 of them left in existence in the wild. There are several zoos that have them in captive breeding programs, and we're one of them, and I think we have one of the largest collections of any in captivity.
One lion-tailed macaque offers an inspiring example of human and animal determination.
Kim is 3 years old, and he has cerebral palsy. He lived with his mother for about 13 months, and then we had to separate him from his mom because she was nursing him, and her milk was no longer nutritious enough to sustain him. And we started hand feeding him, and we still do that. We hand feed him twice a day. He's doing quite well. During the time that we've been hand feeding him, he's gained about 3.5 pounds. In the wild, an animal like Kim, an animal diagnosed with cerebral palsy, would not survive. Kim cannot climb, and in the wild, these animals spend about 80% of their time in the trees. So just the fact that he couldn't climb would definitely have killed him. And we have physical therapists who come in and work with him. We also do exercises with him in an attempt to get him to move better. When we first pulled him away from his mom, he couldn't even use his back legs. He simply dragged them behind him. And now he can walk as well as run. So one of the things that we've done for Kim is we've built this special ramp in the cage. This ramp starts down at the bottom and goes up to the nest box, which is a sleeping area for the animals at night. And Kim now can climb up and sleep with the animals in the nest box. He gets along quite well socially in the group. I think on some level they sense that he has a handicap. The other animals respect him.
In the world today, many animals are so few in number that they face extinction. These animals, once common but now rare, are called endangered species. Giant pandas, orangutans, tigers, gorillas, bald eagles, elephants, and cheetahs are all endangered species. It's hard to imagine a world without them, but there are now so few of these animals left in the wild that they may become extinct unless something is done to save them. Why are some animals dying and in danger of extinction? Animals are dying because they are losing their natural habitats. Rainforests are being cut down. Wetlands are being drained. Cities are replacing grasslands. In short, the animals have fewer places to live. They have nowhere to go. Poachers, too, kill many exotic animals. A poacher is a hunter who kills a rare animal even though it is against the law. Elephants are killed so people can make jewelry out of their ivory tusks. Beautiful big cats like leopards and tigers are hunted for their fur. Rhinoceroses die because people want their horns, which some think have magical powers. Although the future looks dim for many species, there is hope for others. Zoos are playing an important role in helping governments and conservation groups save animals from extinction. The San Diego Zoo is well known for its endangered species conservation efforts. Scientists, curators, and keepers are working on projects that will protect and conserve endangered animals, such as the Fiji Island iguana. Crest scientists are working to save many different kinds of animals: cheetahs, Grevy's zebras, Arabian oryx, Sumatran tigers, lowland gorillas, ruffed lemurs, white rhinoceroses, Fiji Island iguanas, red-crowned cranes, California condors, golden conures, sloth bears, Przewalski's wild horses, Malayan tapirs, slenderhorn gazelles, and Duke Langer monkeys. For every rare animal, there's an interesting story to tell. A good example is the recent story of Farouk, a newborn lion-tailed macaque. He was the newest lion-tailed macaque at the San Diego Zoo, yet he was already an orphan. Shoba, Farouk's natural mother, died when he was only a week old. Animal behaviorists Don Lindberg and Helena Fitch Snyder were very sad that Farouk did not have a mother. Although zoo nursery workers were now caring for Farouk, Don and Helena wanted to try a new special way to raise him. Don and Helena had been studying lion-tailed macaques for many years. During that time, they had learned much about macaque behavior. This is important because lion-tailed macaques are an endangered monkey species. There are only a few hundred of these acrobatic monkeys in zoos, and fewer than 2,000 in their rainforest homes in India. Because baby macaques cuddle and cling to their mothers, Don and Helena decided to raise Farouk with an artificial mother among other lion-tailed macaques. By being around a macaque group, Farouk would learn monkey manners and social skills. Farouk was 3 weeks old when he met his artificial mom. Although his new mother didn't look like a monkey, she was woolly, warm, and huggable, the things that mattered to Farouk. Her body was a wire frame covered with a heating pad and fuzzy fabric. Mom's head was simply an opening in the wire where a keeper could fit bottles of milk for Farouk's daily feedings. Farouk and his new mom lived in a small cage that was placed inside a macaque group's large enclosure each day. Infant Farouk could cling safely to Mom while watching older macaque youngsters play monkey chase all day. The other macaques could slowly get to know Farouk without being able to play roughly with the little guy. At night, Farouk and his woolly wire mom were moved into the nearby keeper kitchen. After a few weeks, a small wire tunnel was added to Farouk's cage so he could scamper out to play with the other young macaques when he wanted. The tunnel, however, was too small for the other bigger macaques to climb inside his tiny cage. Gradually, Farouk spent more time in the big enclosure with the older macaque youngsters. He was now 2 months old and full of energy. After wild games of monkey chase, the other young macaques scurried back to their monkey moms for cuddling and loving. But Farouk only had his wire woolly mom. Now, instead of clinging to his artificial mom, Farouk sat by himself on the big cage floor. He hugged his knees while he rocked back and forth. Farouk's rocking behavior worried Don and Helena. Fortunately, a few days earlier, they noticed that an older lion-tailed macaque named Sita was actively watching Farouk. Although Sita was now old, she had been a mother to many monkey babies. Sita smacked her lips at Farouk. In macaque language, lip-smacking means, "I'm a nice monkey, I want to be your friend." As a result, Don and Helena decided to move Farouk away from other macaques and into Sita's pen. They hoped that Sita would adopt lonely, orphaned Farouk. Farouk was introduced to Sita as he had been to the other macaques. Farouk, in his small cage, was put inside Sita's pen. Farouk could climb out, but Sita was too big to climb in. Sita was patient and let Farouk come to her. Within an hour, Farouk was clinging to Sita, who carried him into a nest box for cuddling. Farouk now had his real monkey mother. Farouk didn't need his wire woolly mom anymore, but he still needed 2 bottles of milk a day, even though he was now old enough to eat fruit. After Farouk and Sita had spent a month and a half together by themselves, the pair was introduced back into Farouk's original macaque group. Farouk was glad to be with the older macaque youngsters again. They raced around the big pen all day playing monkey chase, and when the other young macaques cuddled their real monkey moms, Farouk hugged Sita, his own real monkey mom. For 4 years, Farouk lived with his monkey group at the San Diego Zoo. He grew to be a handsome adult with proper monkey manners and amazing acrobatic skills. Farouk's new home is at another zoo with 3 lion-tailed macaque females. His keepers hope he'll be a father soon. And Sita is doing fine too. She has already adopted another lion-tailed macaque orphan who needed a real monkey mother to cuddle. Like ice cream, most people love zoos. More people visit zoos annually than the combined total of those who attend all of the professional baseball, basketball, and football games that are played each year in the United States. But zoos are more than places to enjoy and learn about wildlife. Today, they're the last remaining homes for many endangered species. More and more natural habitat is disappearing because of increased human development and population. Zoos have become havens for wildlife that need a Noah's Ark to survive. The San Diego Zoo has developed a strategy to help save plants and animals from disappearing from the earth. By increasing the number of births of endangered species in captivity, a process called captive breeding, the zoo can then reintroduce some of them into the wild. The Arabian oryx is a good example of why captive breeding in zoos is so important. In the 1960s, this antelope became extinct in the wild. The last remaining 9 oryx were saved and eventually brought to the San Diego Wild Animal Park, in the hope that one last effort might increase their numbers. Was the zoo's captive breeding program successful? More than 200 Arabian oryx have been born in captivity, and some of these have been reintroduced into their native Middle Eastern habitats. Several hundred more are living in zoos where they help educate people about the value of captive breeding. The Return of Przewalski's Horse would be an apt title for a successful movie about this horse, which became extinct in Mongolia in the 1960s. Since then, zoos have not only saved the Przewalski's horse from extinction, but also raised more than 30 young. 1,000 of them now live in zoos around the world. This story should soon have an even happier ending. When the total captive number in China reaches 80 animals, Przewalski's horse will be released into a large wildlife preserve located along the border between China and Mongolia. The California condor is a powerful, graceful bird with a wingspan of more than 10 feet when soaring. People used to be amazed at the great heights these birds attained. Now, people may again stand in awe as they watch the California condor fly in the wild, thanks to the massive effort to save them. In 1982, only 9 birds remained. Captive breeding efforts by the Los Angeles Zoo and the Zoological Society of San Diego have increased this rare bird's numbers to 64 today. When it was time to reintroduce the California condor into the wild, San Diego Zoo staff constructed a man-made cave that closely resembled the rock cavities condors live in on mountainsides. The California condor's new cave home was airlifted by helicopter to an ideal location. It was hoped that newly released captive birds would make this artificial cave their home, a safe base from which to become accustomed to their new surroundings. Success at last! In January 1992, an historic event happened. The place? California's Sespe Condor Sanctuary in Ventura County. The big event? The first release of captive-bred California condors back into their native range. The release of California condors into the wild was the result of a 10-year captive breeding program. This majestic bird again flies free, just as it has for hundreds of years, thanks to captive breeding.
What can you do to help save resources that preserve animals and their homes? Here's a good idea. It's called Cans for Critters, an aluminum can recycling drive that has been a big hit at the San Diego Zoo for more than 10 years. The money raised by school kids is no small pocket change. One year, the recycling drive raised more than $50,000. Who receives the money? The Zoo Center for Reproduction of Endangered Species, which conducts valuable research to save animals in danger of extinction. Sometimes, CRES's efforts to save a species are so successful that the animals can be returned to their native habitat. There's an important link between recycling aluminum cans and saving endangered animals. You see, aluminum is made from bauxite, a mineral mined from soil, often found beneath rainforests. And living in the rainforest is a wide selection of animals, many of them endangered because the forests are being cut down. Endangered animals have a better chance of survival if the rainforests are left undisturbed. That's why recycling aluminum cans is important. The more we recycle, the less bauxite we'll need, and the rainforest homes of many animals will be preserved. Besides, think of all the other natural resources we use to make cans. Package them, color them, and transport them to stores. Cans for Critters teaches students how the can collection system works. An entire classroom can become involved, or people can participate by themselves. As an added incentive, the zoo offers prizes, like animal stickers, coupons for pizzas and ice cream, and free passes to the zoo and San Diego Wild Animal Park. Of course, you don't have to join the Cans for Critters program to recycle cans. You can start your very own recycling program. Did you know that the energy saved by recycling just one aluminum can is enough to operate a television set for 3 hours? During one recent year, enough cans were recycled to save more than 11 billion kilowatt hours of electricity, enough to supply all the houses and apartments in New York City for 6 months. Perhaps even more amazing is the fact that people in the United States throw away enough cans each year to rebuild all the airplanes that fly our major airlines. Here's how you can make a difference. Whether you do the recycling yourself, join in with your classmates at school, or help with the recycling efforts at your workplace. A. Buy products with minimal packaging. B. Save cardboard boxes or paper and plastic bags for storing household items. C. Buy products like cleaners, toiletries, and dry goods in economy-sized packages. Consider buying your food in bulk. It'll save you money and reduce packaging waste too. D. Churn decayed organic materials from your yard into mulch or fertilizer. E. Reduce your junk mail. That saves a lot of paper and trees. Just fill out a form at your local post office to remove your name from the third-class mailing list. A class of students beginning a recycling program could follow these steps. A. Hold a school-wide assembly to educate your fellow students about recycling. Invite guest speakers, such as a recycling center director or a community leader, to talk about their activities. B. Submit an article about your program to the school newspaper and send a news release to local newspaper editors and to radio and television reporters. They may respond by publicizing your efforts. If you work in an office that's beginning a recycling program, consider the following steps. A. Contact your local collection agency. Its staff can help you plan your recycling program. B. Choose people in your office to coordinate your recycling efforts and to motivate others. You'll also have to figure out how you're going to store what you collect. Sometimes recycling companies supply offices with storage containers at no cost. Make sure everyone knows what kind of paper you'll be recycling. White only, mixed colors, or newspapers. It's a good idea to place small recycling containers around your office. These can be periodically dumped into a larger collection bin. Those are just a few ways you can get involved. Remember, each of us can make a difference. Yes, we can heal the earth, and recycling is one of the best and easiest ways to do it.
Efforts to breed the southern white rhino have produced history-making results. If you look way out toward the middle of the enclosure, you'll see another southern white rhino out there with a little baby. He just turned 7 weeks old. He's a real feisty little guy, too. I've seen him out here chasing the zebra sometimes. And when the zebras chase back, he just runs back and gets mom.
The park's prolific herd of white rhinos has helped remove these animals from the roster of endangered species.
There has long been a controversy regarding the panda's heritage. Dr. Ollie Ryder is the San Diego Zoo geneticist.
It was first named as a bear. Therein, after other people looked at the material, now basically an analysis of the skull, of the hands and so forth, and there was some differences of opinion about really whether it was a bear or not. So one group of experts would say, well, it's clearly more raccoon-like, and others would say it's clearly more bear-like. Now, when you look where they fall on the family trees of carnivores, they fall smack dab with the bears.
Because their habitat is shrinking in the wild, the giant panda is highly endangered. A massive die-off of their main food, bamboo, has left many pandas sick or starving. As a result, the Chinese government has set aside 11 preserves to protect their national treasure. Scientists are redoubling their efforts to find ways to save them. We are all involved in the effort.
We connect with these animals perhaps more uniquely than with some others. But that connection, we simply don't want to lose. We don't want our children to lose that connection. And so that's reason enough, because we're now in charge. It's up to us whether these animals survive or not.
To many of the millions of visitors to the San Diego Zoo, the panda's 6-month visit was much too short. As Basi, Yan Yan, and their keepers board their United Airlines flight to Beijing, we all hope that these living symbols of the world's endangered species will be able to return for future generations.
Did you ever wonder what animals at the San Diego Zoo eat? They eat a lot of the same foods that we eat. For instance, like human babies, young animals are often fed special milk formulas and fruit sauces. Their favorites include applesauce and mashed bananas. Do some animals eat foods you wouldn't like? Probably. Bears, for example, are given cod liver oil, which is rich in vitamins. What do koalas eat in zoos? Leaves, but only those of a few species of eucalyptus trees from their native Australia. The zoo's horticultural department conducted a 2-year experiment to determine which species of eucalyptus was the healthiest for koalas and the best tasting. Then the trees were planted at the zoo. Now there's always an abundant supply of fresh leaves on hand. If you're lucky, you'll see the koalas eating the leaves one by one, but you're more likely to catch them sleeping, their favorite activity. Like most animals, koalas don't overeat, and they only eat the freshest leaves, rejecting the old ones. In the wild, cheetahs chase down their food while running at speeds of more than 60 miles per hour. But since cheetahs can't hunt that way in captivity, zoos create an artificial situation that simulates conditions in the wild. In place of the live prey, like an antelope, that the cheetah would normally hunt, researchers place a food bait that moves. The movement stimulates the cheetah's hunting instinct, its appetite, and its feisty character. Cheetahs at the Wild Animal Park are given food that resembles what they hunt in the wild. These carcasses are a challenge for the big cats because they exercise their jaws and teeth. Other fascinating animals to watch at feeding time are elephants. In the morning, they eat alfalfa-based pelts, which contain all the vitamins and minerals that elephants need to stay healthy. For lunch and dinner, they eat huge amounts of Sudanese hay. A full-grown adult may eat more than 300 pounds a day. They also eat browse, roughage trimmed from bushes around the zoo's grounds. Apples and carrots are a special treat, and sometimes in summer the keepers throw a watermelon into their ponds. As with people, good dental hygiene is recommended for elephants. Zookeepers check the elephants' teeth for infections and to see if they're growing in, moving forward, or falling out. When elephants go looking for food in the wild, their tusks sometimes come in handy for digging, pulling up tender roots, and stripping the bark off trees. But while we enjoy watching the elephants, we shouldn't forget that they're threatened in the wild because of their valuable tusks. For years, people used elephant ivory to make piano keys, jewelry, sculpture, and other artifacts. It's now illegal to trade or sell ivory products in many countries, and new pianos are made with plastic keys. As a result, not as many elephants are being killed for their tusks. Wild elephant poaching, however, is still a problem. Worldwide, elephants are endangered because much of their habitat has been destroyed by human development. Their continued presence and the continued well-being of other animals on our planet will depend on people. We must preserve enough natural habitats for these unique wild animals to survive.
High in the rugged Chonglai Mountains of central China, a young farm worker raced across the potato fields toward home. "I found a giant panda that is starving," she excitedly told her family and the other farm workers as she arrived at the village. The people knew they should help the suffering animal. This is because giant pandas are an unusual and rare species of bear living only in China's interior mountain ranges. Giant pandas are considered a national treasure of the People's Republic of China, and they are a critically endangered animal. Even one death would be a great loss to the species' survival. Immediately, the rescue began. The villagers dropped what they were doing and rushed to save the giant panda. They grabbed a large cage, some rope, and a long pole, then followed the young girl back across the fields and into a forest thick with towering fir, spruce, and maple trees. They crossed a raging stream and entered an area, Bassi Gully, that was covered with dying patches of bamboo as far as they could see. Near the bamboo and partly submerged in the stream lay a young giant panda. It was barely alive. The farm worker and the villagers quickly pulled the animal from the water. They dried it with their jackets. The dull eyes of the panda gazed up at the girl as it panted for breath. Several other rescuers lifted the panda into the cage. The long pole was tied to the top of the cage, making it easy for the villagers to carry the panda out of the forest. Two men, one at each end, balanced the pole on their shoulders so that the caged panda dangled between them. Then they brought the panda back to their rescue station. There, the starving panda, a female that was named Bassi after the gully in which she was found, was nursed back to health. Bassi was starving because the bamboo was dying in various regions of China. Bamboo leaves, shoots, and stalks are the giant panda's main food. Although they will also eat meat, pandas are usually too slow to catch the rats, squirrels, and other small mammals that share their forest habitat. Like everything else, it is normal for bamboo to die, usually dying about every 40 to 100 years. Before it dies, the bamboo, which is really a woody grass, flowers. Then it drops seeds, so new bamboo can sprout. Several years must pass, though, before the seeds grow into tall new bamboo plants that the giant pandas can eat. Years ago, when the bamboo died in one area, the giant panda could travel easily to a different mountain to find more living bamboo. But now, new farms and villages often block their way, so many pandas simply starve to death in withered bamboo patches. Then, too, many forests and bamboo thickets have been destroyed to build these farms and villages. The villagers were pleased that they had saved Bassie's life. After she fully regained her strength at the giant panda rescue station, the Chinese government decided that she would not be returned to the wild. Instead, she would live at the Fuzhou Zoo. She and a male giant panda named Yan Yan were later chosen to go to the United States as goodwill ambassadors to help many people learn about the endangered status of the giant panda. The lucky zoo chosen to host Bassie and Yan Yan was the San Diego Zoo in California. When San Diego Zoo staff heard that the giant pandas were coming to visit, the excitement began. Giant pandas had never been in San Diego before. Indeed, a lot of people were thrilled that the world's most famous zoo would be the temporary home for a pair of one of the world's most popular animals. When the giant pandas arrived in San Diego, a lot of excited people greeted them. Even reporters and photographers were there. More than 50 waited eagerly as Bassie and Yan Yan arrived in a huge airplane after a 17-hour flight from China. Everyone waited breathlessly as the airplane's cargo hatch opened. Bassie and Yan Yan had traveled in their own private compartment, complete with heating and air conditioning. The photographers leapt off the bus and raced toward the jet. High above the clicking cameras sat Bassie and Yan Yan in their travel cages, peering down at the excited, grinning crowd. The giant pandas were here, at last! A few days after Bassie and Yan Yan arrived, zoo roosters crowed, peacocks cackled, kookaburras giggled, and a mist rose from the hippo's pond. People were already lining up at the main entrance to the zoo. Today was the first day for people to see the giant pandas. 800 special friends of the San Diego Zoo were invited to the celebration. With the sharp crack of a drum and the clanging of cymbals, a traditional Chinese lion dance began the festivities. Dancers in a colorful, shimmering lion costume swooped and swirled past the crowd. Young children joined the excited crowd, marching by, waving pink, blue, green, and yellow flags. Then, with 2 clangs of a Chinese gong, the bamboo curtains to the panda's enclosure were rolled up. A few moments later, out waddled Yan Yan. The crowd gasped at its first sight of this special animal. Yan Yan's keeper celebrated too, by giving Yan Yan a paw shake, and then she dropped a bunch of plump red grapes into his furry palm. Suddenly, Bassie made her first appearance. Her keeper, Cao Ling, handed Bassie a bouquet of colorful flowers, which Bassie accepted and then waved them to the crowd. Her next feat was to push a stroller across the floor. Bassie had trouble steering the stroller, so Cao Ling helped her guide it. Whenever Cao Ling spoke to Bassie, in Chinese of course, the trained panda knew just what to do. When Cao Ling handed Bassie a human baby doll, the panda cradled it in her arms and gently patted it on the back. People oohed and awed, and many people secretly hoped that Bassie would one day become a mother to a baby panda. Most certainly, Bassie would care for her own baby a bit differently. A giant panda is born blind and helpless. Its eyes are closed until it is 40 days old. Its pink body is covered with thin white hair that doesn't begin to thicken and turn black in parts until it is a week old. The newborn panda weighs about 4 ounces, the weight of a stick of butter, and it is 800 times smaller than its mother. To protect her infant and to keep it warm during its first month of life, the mother panda holds it in one furry paw, cradling it against her body. Her cub's loud cries are a signal that it is hungry. The mother holds her infant to her breast up to 14 times a day so it can suckle her milk. As the baby grows bigger and stronger, it nurses less often. The mother will leave an older cub alone in a den while she feeds on bamboo. By the time a cub is 7 months old, it has grown considerably and is about the size of the cub in this picture. Bassie and Yan Yan lived in separate areas in their exhibit at the San Diego Zoo. This was because giant pandas live by themselves in the wild. They are only together when they breed. Still, if the pandas felt friendly, they could rub noses or touch paws through the bars that divided them. Later, When they got to know each other better, they enjoyed playing with each other. People especially enjoyed these antics as prime-time entertainment. Bassie and Yan Yan were handled by their trainers for a very special reason. If they were used to people, then researchers could easily gather valuable information about them. Mr. Chen, the Fuzhou Zoo director, made house calls to the pandas' exhibits. During his examinations, he gathered valuable data. He listened to the pandas' heartbeats, took their temperatures, and measured their blood pressures and breathing rates. He could even give the animals shots if they were sick or collect blood samples. The medical data Mr. Chen collected and the information he learned about the pandas would be helpful to other scientists who are trying to save the giant panda from extinction. Before waving goodbye to the zoo guests, Bassie entertained them with one more feat. She balanced on a teeter-board and caught colorful rings with her paws. With thundering applause from the crowd, the panda premiere and Bassie and Yan Yan's first performance ended. Bassie was then treated to a feast of bamboo and apples and was soon sound asleep.
What can you do to help save resources that preserve animals and their homes? Here's a good idea.
In the world today, many animals are so few in number that they face extinction. These animals, once common, It was time to celebrate. Gordy Gorilla had been born a short time ago, only the second gorilla ever born at the San Diego Zoo. But the baby gorilla was being rushed to the zoo's nursery. He was in danger of dying if he didn't eat soon. Arriving a month earlier than expected, Gordy Gorilla was a small baby. His mother, Alvila, was expecting him in late May of 1986. It was a complete surprise when on the morning of April 29th, her keepers found Alvila cradling a 3 1/4-pound baby boy in her arms. Alvila was a good mother. She held little Gordy close to keep him warm and licked him so he would be clean. She seemed proud of her new son and sat next to the bars of her sleeping room so the keepers could see infant Gordy up close. But something was wrong. Gordy wouldn't nurse from his mother. The zoo veterinarian and the keepers grew concerned, and they took turns watching him round the clock to make sure he was healthy. But they didn't see him eat. Not once during Gordy's first 2 days of life did he swallow even a drop of his mother's milk. An emergency plan was rushed into action to save Gordy Gorilla. First, the veterinarian raced Gordy to the zoo's nursery. There, zoo staff tried to get the hungry infant ape to eat. When Gordy arrived at the nursery, he was so weak that he couldn't open his eyes. A nursery worker, Joanne Thomas Romer, tried to feed him a milk formula from a bottle, but Gordy couldn't drink the milk on his own. The veterinarian figured that Gordy hadn't yet developed the ability to suck milk because he'd been born a month early. Joanne held her fingers around the corners of Gordy's mouth and under his chin to help him grab hold of the nipple of his feeding bottle. Now, with Joanne's help, Gordy was able to drink. Every 2 hours when it was time for milk, Joanne helped his tiny gorilla lips grasp the nipple. Gordy slept in an incubator to keep his fragile body warm. He was also dressed in a nightshirt for warmth and wore diapers to stay clean. The weak baby gorilla lay very still in his bed. When Joanne went home for the day, other nursery attendants came to babysit Gordy. They fed him and cared for him through the entire night. Fortunately, Gordy grew stronger over the next couple of days. He opened his eyes, he sat up, he had more energy and even moved around a little. The veterinarian decided to return Gordy to his mother, Alvila, and hoped the little gorilla would begin nursing. But Gordy still couldn't drink on his own, so he had to go back to the nursery. In the beginning, Gordy was the quietest ape the nursery workers had ever raised. The zoo attendants recalled that the pygmy chimpanzees and orangutans they cared for were much more playful at an early age. As the weeks passed, it became easier and easier for Gordy to drink milk on his own. But milk wasn't his only food for long. Like a human baby, this gorilla kid learned to eat baby food. When he was a month and a half old, Gordy ate his first spoonful of Gerber's vegetables. Yum! It was fun to have something new, and he gobbled it up. 2 weeks later came strained fruit. That was even tastier. The fruit soon became Gordy's favorite food, but he was treated to it only after he finished his vegetables. As Gordy grew older, he became more playful. He was nothing like the quiet baby gorilla who had arrived at the nursery wrapped in a towel. He was now a rough-and-tumble young gorilla. Often the nursery workers let Gordy out of his wire pen to play in the nursery. They worked in the same room with him while he played by himself. They always kept an eye on him, though. Gordy climbed on everything. The dressers, the cribs, even the incubators. He roamed around the room, exploring every corner of the nursery. He liked peering into the pens of the other nursery animals. He was allowed to watch, but not touch them. The nursery workers loved Gordy dearly. They celebrated his first birthday with a party. But Gordy's first birthday also meant it would soon be time for him to leave the nursery. At last, he was strong, healthy, and old enough to be more on his own. He was ready to live with other gorillas. On Gordy's last morning in the zoo nursery, Joanne packed a small bag for him. In it were Gordy's favorite blankets and a few feeding bottles. Joanne was to take Gordy by car to meet his new gorilla family at his new home in the San Diego Wild Animal Park. His new home was the park instead of the zoo, because other young gorillas lived there who could be playmates for Gordy. The park's keepers slowly introduced Gordy to his new family, including Cammy, who became Gordy's adoptive mother. Because Gordy was the new kid on the block, he was to meet only a few gorillas at a time. This plan meant Gordy would not be overwhelmed with too many gorillas at once. Gordy was the youngest gorilla at the Wild Animal Park. People who had watched him growing up at the zoo could visit him at the park. They saw Gordy exploring, wrestling, and playing with his new family. Sometimes he sunbathed in a pile of leaves, or he played hide-and-seek with the other gorillas. Gordy acted silly, too, making funny faces or sticking his foot in his mouth. He even learned to thump on his chest the way big gorillas do. Gordy wasn't the littlest gorilla in his family for long. His adopted mother, Cammy, gave birth to a baby. The infant ape was given the name Paul Don. Paul Don's birth was special because gorilla births in captivity are rare. In fact, all gorillas are endangered, which means they will vanish from the earth one day unless people do everything possible to save them. They're endangered because poachers, illegal hunters, have killed them for food and to make souvenirs out of their body parts, and also because people have cut down their forest homes for farmland and lumber. Zoos around the world are trying to help save gorillas by educating people about how special they are and by breeding them in captivity. Governments in Africa have also set aside forest preserves for gorillas, and they are enforcing laws that prohibit hunters from killing gorillas.
How did the San Diego Zoo start? I always say that the world-famous San Diego Zoo began with a roar. It all started one afternoon in 1916. My brother Paul and I were in Balboa Park in San Diego, visiting the animals on display there. Suddenly, I heard the lions roar in their cages, and I had an inspiration. Wouldn't it be splendid if San Diego had a zoo? I half-jokingly asked my brother. You know, I think I'll start one. Little did I know how prophetic my wish would be. In what seemed like no time, I'd convinced city leaders and others to help me build a zoo. But sometimes important things take time, and I learned to be patient. 6 years later, in 1922, my dream became a reality. From the start, I knew I had my work cut out for me. Do you know how many animals it takes to make a zoo? There could be bears, Lions, tigers, leopards, wolves, foxes, pandas, koalas, monkeys, gorillas, rhinoceroses, hippopotamuses, zebras, camels, giraffes, bats, flamingos, hundreds of plants. And that's just the beginning. I felt like Noah trying to fill his ark. And of course, elephants were on the list. Everyone wanted to see them. But finding elephants in the early 1900s was no easy task. The story of how we found our first elephants reminds me of the journalist who reported a UFO, and then had to come up with one to prove it. In other words, I had told the public that they were going to get elephants, so now I had to do something about it. At first I thought that finding elephants would be easy. That's because the Sells Flato Circus was coming to town, and its staff had offered to donate a pair. I was thrilled at the news. Finally, the great day arrived when my zoo project was to receive its first elephants. The mayor, our congressman, and a collection of other notable San Diegans were on hand for the celebration. Well, the horse act went splendidly, and the band played on, and on, and on. And that's when I began to worry. The elephants were supposed to appear after the national anthem was played, but there was no sign of them anywhere. A hush fell over the crowd, and soon people began shuffling silently toward the exits. Everyone was numb with disappointment. Later, we learned that the circus staff had been too quick with their generosity. They shouldn't have offered to give away elephants they still needed. The following week, my hopes were raised again. My friend, John Ringling, owner of the famous Ringling Circus, was coming to town with his performers. One night during his visit, I told John about my search. He promptly called his elephant keeper and asked if their circus could spare one of its performers. "There's Albert," the keeper said. Albert, it turned out, was a huge male that was kept away from the other elephants. He had a reputation for being hard to handle. John said I could have Albert as a gift. I immediately called the newspapers, certain that the news would make headlines. Just as before, the celebration to welcome San Diego's first elephant was a festive one. Festive, that is, except for Albert. When it came time to move him out of his private animal car, Albert proved that he had a mind of his own. We tried everything to budge him, but he just sat there. Finally, at 1 o'clock in the morning, we had to admit defeat. As quickly as I could, I phoned the newspaper to stop them from publishing the story, but it was too late. The newspaper presses were ready to roll. There was just enough time for the editors to insert the word "almost" at the end of the headline. The next morning, to my embarrassment, thousands of San Diegans opened their papers to read, "The zoo receives an elephant. Almost." We did finally get our first elephants, but Empress and Queenie caused a lot more headaches than smiles. We had hired a railroad baggage car to transport them to San Diego from San Francisco. But when it was time to load them in, Empress and Queenie protested. Then, when they were finally on board, they had a temper tantrum. They tried to yank out the window bars and tear the car apart. When the train finally reached its destination, we began to unload. Everything seemed fine until Empress and Queenie decided to stage a protest. Their long trip, which began halfway around the world in India, had been full of strange and confusing experiences. Empress and Queenie had apparently had enough. They simply stopped in their tracks on the loading platform. Like four-legged boulders, they just stood there. We did everything imaginable to get them to move. We talked sweetly to them, then we tried being stern. We pushed, and then we pulled. Nothing worked. They were statues of stubbornness. And then I remembered, Indian elephants were used to being ridden. Ready to try anything now, I climbed up on the back of Empress's neck and found that by gently kicking her, I could get her to move. I could even get her to go in the direction I wished by tugging on her ear. My helper, Harry Edwards, leapt up on Queenie. The same driving instructions worked for him, too. Feeling like cowboys, and also feeling pretty silly, we headed down the street atop our giant gray taxis. As our urban safari ambled toward the zoo, you should have seen the looks on people's faces. More than a few drivers slammed on their brakes when they saw those huge animals looming out of the dark. Finally, the zoo entrance came into view. A big crowd had begun to gather. By now, Harry and I were both so tired that we thought we were dreaming, and the elephants were as exhausted as we were. We served them a hearty meal, then tucked them safely into their new quarters, and I let out a huge sigh of relief. Climb aboard. We're about to go on a shooting safari with Dr. Harry Wegeforth, founder of the San Diego Zoo. Want to come? But don't bring guns. We'll only be shooting with our cameras. We want the animals to live long and healthy lives so that people can enjoy watching them for years to come. We're looking at scenes of the same wild country that greeted Dr. Harry Wegeforth when he bravely traveled on his own safaris to capture wild animals to house at the San Diego Zoo. Dr. Harry's search for animals for the San Diego Zoo took him to many beautiful exotic countries. For several of his expeditions, he traveled by water on a friend's yacht. Dr. Wegeforth was a brave man to sail to foreign ports in the early 1900s. But he was a smart man, too, because he brought back more than just animals. He collected hundreds of plants that the animals liked to eat and that they would need to survive. Once, when looking for Guadalupe fur seals, he had some unexpected luck. Some scientists believed that these marine mammals had become extinct. So when Dr. Wegeforth heard that some had been spotted on a Pacific island, he got very excited. He organized an expedition, but the rare seals eluded him. He was disappointed, of course, but he wasn't discouraged for long. Soon after, a fisherman from Guadalupe Island came to the zoo with 2 Guadalupe fur seals. In 1924, he took a collecting trip to Australia. See New Trails, Old Worlds from 75th Anniversary Packet. This was no ordinary trip. Remember, passenger airplanes were rare in 1924. This trip meant sailing for more than 3 weeks, which is a long time when you're at sea. Animals from Southern California, like pelicans and sea lions, were brought along to trade with Australian zoos. Soon after the trip began, everyone's worst fears of a terrible storm came true. For 3 miserable days and nights, a strong wind dashed salt spray and water across the ship's deck, drenching the animals and threatening to overturn and smash the stacked cages. It was hard to keep the animals warm and dry, and even harder to feed them properly. Feeding wild animals even during normal dry weather is never easy. They have special diets. Some are finicky eaters, and some of them require food that takes a long time to prepare. Can you imagine having to go from cage to cage in a torrential storm at sea, carrying all those special dinners on the slippery, rocking deck? Finally, after 21 days, the ship landed in Australia. The animals from California were removed from their cages and taken to their new homes. Then their cages were cleaned and loaded up with all of the new Australian animals: giant red kangaroos, wallaroos, wallabies, wombats, Tasmanian devils, bandicoots, and opossums. There was one particular animal that amazed everyone: the echidna, a primitive egg-laying mammal similar to a platypus that nurses its young and carries them around in a pouch. Soon the ship's deck was packed, but space was still needed for the gorgeous sampling of exotic birds to come. The crew had to move fast. They wanted to set sail in good weather for the long voyage home. With a few moves and sorting of cages, enough room was cleared, and everyone welcomed aboard a colorful collection of mandarin ducks, Maggie geese, emus, giant flightless birds, cassowaries, bowerbirds, cockatiels, and many other birds. Just as the ship began to pull away from shore, a small delivery truck whizzed up to the gangplank with 2 large crates and a big sign saying, "Koala bears for the children of San Diego, USA, from the children of Sydney, Australia." Inside the crates were a pair of the famed marsupials that, like opossums and kangaroos, carry their babies around in pouches. Also included in this last-minute delivery was a small, locked iron chest. The crew members scattered to perform their seafaring jobs, wondering what mysterious new passenger they had taken on board. It wasn't until they were hundreds of miles out to sea, with thousands more to go, that the crew discovered they were sailing with, gulp, a giant king cobra snake. When he wasn't bringing animals from foreign lands back to California, Dr. Wegeforth often took mini safaris to nearby Balboa Park to collect snakes. Friends of the zoo brought in snakes that they'd collected too. Sometimes Dr. Wegeforth used these reptiles to trade for other species from other zoos. Other times he sold them to dealers on the East Coast and used the funds to buy animals that the zoo didn't have yet. Dr. Harry knew from his safaris and trading experiences that some animal dealers didn't treat their animals well. They considered money more important than the health of the animals they worked with, and that made Dr. Harry very angry. It also angered him that these same dealers were very good at inflating the price of animals, that is, selling them for much more than what was fair. To put an end to this practice, he got together with other zoo directors to form the American Association of Zoological Parks and Aquariums, AAZPA. Today, AAZPA continues to oversee the fair trade and collection of animals. It also assists captive breeding programs, serves as a legal watchdog in Washington, D.C., and promotes communication and professionalism among zoos. Animal collecting expeditions are pretty much a thing of the past. Today, animals usually arrive at zoos as gifts, trades, the result of captive breeding programs, or because someone has tried to import them illegally and has been caught. Still, if he were alive today, Dr. Wegeforth would probably be amazed at the diversity on display at the zoo he founded. The San Diego Zoo is home to more than 800 different animal species. That's more than 3,800 animals, and its plant collection features more than 6,500 species.
There are thousands of animals to see at the San Diego Zoo and the San Diego Wild Animal Park. This recording will help you enjoy them in a different way. For these are animal sounds. The zoo is quietest in the hour just before dawn, before the keepers, landscapers, and office staff arrive, while most of the animals are sleeping. It's the birds which break the spell first, tuning up to help orchestrate the morning. Soon, from all parts of the grounds come the sounds of animals waking and stirring, hooting, braying, growling, coughing, and in various other ways voicing their impatience to be looked after. Before long, the day's routine has been established, the animals quiet down somewhat, and the first visitors are admitted. When I made these recordings, I didn't know a Himalayan black bear from a white-quilled black bustard, or a koala from a kookaburra. Some of these sounds are surprising, some are rare, some familiar, some may even be frightening. I was allowed to visit the gorillas in their sleeping and eating area behind the enclosure. These are lowland gorillas from Central Africa, and the female is nervous at having a stranger around. That's why she's making this aggressive sound. They're fed vegetables, fruit, milk, and dry monkey chow. The keeper's filling the dish now. And a huge silverback male, who weighs almost 450 pounds, is starting to eat. Acting just like any human baby, this 3-year-old gorilla is upset because the others have left her alone. In the wild, these gentle, shy animals are actually hunted for souvenirs, and that's why they're an endangered species. Another of the great apes is the chimpanzee. Other members of the simian family include baboons. They're fiercely territorial and will challenge any intruder. Vast herds of hoofed animals roam Africa's grasslands. Antelopes, gnus, gazelles. In captivity, the young sometimes need special care. In the wild, they're left behind to become meat for predators. But here, they're hand-fed vitamins and baby formula by specially trained keepers. This baby blackbuck has just finished nursing. This baby, Gnu, is mooing at some children outside the nursery. And here's a baby springbok. The baby ostrich makes this sound to call to other chicks. When I recorded the African hunting dog, it had been separated from the others for medical treatment and was mournfully howling. And here's the white-quilled black bustard. We talked about him before. You can hear him from anywhere in the zoo. Prowling and pacing in his rocky enclosure is a black leopard. But of course, no visit with the animals of Africa would be complete without a stop to hear the king of the jungle, the African lion. Now here's what's happened. It's feeding time in the early morning, and the keeper is opening the steel doors at the back of the exhibit. Here comes the male. And now the lioness. As I was moving a microphone, I accidentally got to within about a foot of the male, who objected. The hair on my neck stood straight up. When they're angry or agitated, you can hear their roars echo throughout the zoo. I hope you've enjoyed this brief tour. These are just a few of the thousands of animals you can experience at the San Diego Zoo and the San Diego Wild Animal Park. And next time you visit, maybe you'll look with your ears as well as your eyes. There are thousands of animals to see at the San Diego Zoo and the San Diego Wild Animal Park. This recording will help you enjoy them in a different way, for these are animal sounds. The zoo is quietest in the hour just before dawn, before the keepers, landscapers, and office staff arrive, while most of the animals are sleeping. It's the birds which break the spell first, tuning up to help orchestrate the morning. Soon, from all parts of the grounds come the sounds of animals waking and stirring, hooting, braying, growling, coughing, and in various other ways voicing their impatience to be looked after. Before long, the day's routine has been established, the animals quiet down somewhat, and the first visitors are admitted. When I made these recordings, I didn't know a Himalayan black bear from a white-quilled black bustard, or a koala from a kookaburra. Some of these sounds are surprising, some are rare, some familiar, some may even be frightening. Riverbanks of South America are home for many exotic and brightly colored birds, like the long-necked spindly-legged flamingos. The Toko toucan, with soft fur-like feathers and a beak nearly as long as his body. Here's a bird nearly everyone visiting the zoo has heard, the naked-throated bellbird. The Oripendula makes a variety of sounds. Some of them don't sound like a bird at all. The only bear that's native to South America is the spectacled bear. He's black with lighter coloring around his eyes, just like spectacles. These are dusky titi monkeys from Bolivia. Driving through the desert areas of the western United States, you might have heard the lonely howling of the coyote. Here, another one barks playfully with his keeper. And another native westerner, the rattlesnake. During breeding season, prairie chickens gather by the thousands in the plains states. The male is rather ordinary looking until he begins his courtship display. He sticks out his chest, spreads his tail feathers, drums his feet rapidly on the ground, and makes a hollow booming sound in his puffed up throat sac. The Galapagos Islands off Ecuador are home for 11 different races of giant tortoises. They can weigh up to 500 pounds, and they live to be well over 100 years old. Here's the sound they make during courtship and mating. Some of the most interesting animals I encountered came from Australia, including some of the world's most beautiful birds, like Leadbeater's cockatoo. The slender-billed cockatoo.
the red-tailed black cockatoo, and the rose-breasted cockatoo. The huge flightless emu lives here. As well as one of everybody's favorites, a sound I'm sure you've heard in countless jungle movies, the laughing kookaburra. This raucous cawing is the great gray bowerbird. And this sweet plaintive song is the silver-crowned friarbird. I hope you've enjoyed this brief tour. These are just a few of the thousands of animals you can experience at the San Diego Zoo and the San Diego Wild Animal Park. And next time you visit, maybe you'll look with your ears as well as your eyes. There are thousands of animals to see at the San Diego Zoo and the San Diego Wild Animal Park. This recording will help you enjoy them in a different way, for these are animal sounds. The zoo is quietest in the hour just before dawn, before the keepers, landscapers, and office staff arrive, while most of the animals are sleeping. It's the birds which break the spell first, tuning up to help orchestrate the morning. Soon, from all parts of the grounds come the sounds of animals waking and stirring, hooting, braying, growling, coughing, and in various other ways voicing their impatience to be looked after. Before long, the day's routine has been established, the animals quiet down somewhat, and the first visitors are admitted. When I made these recordings, I didn't know a Himalayan black bear from a white-quilled black bustard, or a koala from a kookaburra. Some of these sounds are surprising, some are rare, some familiar, some may even be frightening. Everyone loves koalas. They're cute, they're furry, and they're remarkably like the little teddy bears that we all knew as kids. So I was totally unprepared for the ferocious sounds that these marsupials are capable of making. They live in eucalyptus trees. They eat only certain kinds of eucalyptus leaves,
and they are jealously territorial. There's a female in the enclosure with this male, and that's why he's telling all the other males to stay away. Off Australia's southeast coast is the island of Tasmania, and anybody who's watched a Bugs Bunny cartoon knows about Tasmanian devils. Yes, they really exist, and yes, they are fierce, carnivorous, and noisy. On New Guinea, the large island north of Australia, lives the cassowary. This large, flightless bird has a brilliantly colored head with an exotically shaped bony growth on top. Further north are the countless islands that make up Indonesia, where the Bulwar's pheasant is common. And the large Argus pheasant. And the Palawan peacock pheasant. In the jungles of Borneo and Malaysia, one of the most dramatic voices belongs to the siamang, a primate with a large inflatable throat sac, which gives its call a booming resonance. Of all the world's primates, one of the most graceful is the gibbon, a smaller cousin of the siamang, which inhabits the jungles of Southeast Asia. The beautiful peacocks that roam freely in the zoo are called Indian blue peafowl. These regal birds with their spectacular tails were pets of royalty in ancient China. This unusual sound is a Himalayan black bear.
Some scientists believe that the changes in tempo and in pitch are used to communicate. In the rainforests of Madagascar, the large island off Africa's eastern shore, live red-ruffed lemurs, small primitive primates. On frozen islands close to the Antarctic Circle, we find black-footed penguins, also called jackass penguins, for obvious reasons. This braying call is usually made to attract females during the mating season. I've saved one of the most fascinating animals for last. Everyone has seen elephants in the movies or the circus or the zoo, but to stand up next to one of these huge creatures, to pat its rough hide and have its trunk sniff and touch you in curiosity, was one of the highlights of this recording project. These Asian elephants have a tremendous variety of sounds. This female is lazily blowing through her trunk. When an entire herd gets excited, the sound can shake the ground. I hope you've enjoyed this brief tour. These are just a few of the thousands of animals you can experience at the San Diego Zoo and the San Diego Wild Animal Park. And next time you visit, maybe you'll look with your ears as well as your eyes.